Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. Wherever you're in the world, we welcome you to this Unlocking Access Funding Your Academic Journey webinar. My name is Diana Chacón, and I will be moderating the conversation today. As you know, this webinar is part of the series that the Research Committee number 7 on Women and Politics in the Global South, part of the International Political Science Associations, bring to you every month on current crucial topics that not everybody talks about, or that we kind of stay quiet sometimes about it, but definitely crucial topics that we want to discuss. Today we talk about academic travel funding. And why is this important? Well, because each year, countless scholars, especially from the Global South, are accepted to present at leading academic conference only to encounter a familiar obstacle. Well, the cost of attendance, very familiar to everyone, perhaps. We know the struggle. Funding can feel limited, highly competitive, and out of reach sometimes. So that's why we're having this honest conversation, exploring the strategies for funding and fundraising academic travel. We hope that you will come out with practical, creative strategies and insights to guide you navigating your own funding journey. And for that, I have the honor to introduce two wonderful professionals with a wealth of practical expertise that will generously share with us today. They are Kavita Ramdas and Jane Sloane. So I want to hear indicate that today it seems to be a very, the stars kind of are a little bit misaligned. So we're going to ask for your patience while Kavita joins us. But in the meantime, I still want to introduce you to her. Kavita is a globally recognized advocate for gender and racial justice with over 3 decades of experience leading, advising, and reimagining philanthropic and civil society approaches to equity and human rights. As the former president and CEO of the Global Fund for Women, she helped transform the organization into the world's largest public foundation, supporting women's rights, reaching grassroots activists in over 170 countries. She has served in senior leadership roles at major institutions, including the Ford Foundation, where she advised President Darren Walker on global strategy, and the Open Societies Foundation, where she directed the Women's Rights Program and spearheaded the foundation's landmark $100 million commitment to gender justice in 2021. In 2024, she was named a Richard von Weizsäcker Fellow at the Robert Bosch Academy in Berlin and has served as activist in residence at the Global Fund for Women. Through her consulting firm, K&R Sisters, Kavita now works with movements and institutions dedicated to defending democracy and advancing intersectional equity. She's a sought-after speaker and writer, and she brings a sharp intersectional lens to issues on gender, race, and climate justice. Her academic contributions include visiting positions at Stanford, Georgetown, and Princeton. She serves on the boards of ICA and GERS, Visualizing Palestine, and Global Green Grants Fund. Kavita is born in India and holds degrees from Delhi University, Mount Holyoke College, and Princeton. She lives in New York City with her partner, and she's mother of a daughter. And our second speaker or invitee today is Jane Sloane. Jane is an international respected leader in the fields of gender equality, women's empowerment, and social justice. With a career spanning advocacy, philanthropy, development, and strategic leadership, she has held influential roles at global organizations dedicated to advancing equity for women and girls. Most recently, Jane served as Senior Director of Women's Empowerment and Gender Equality at the IPSA Foundation, where she led groundbreaking initiatives across Asia. Previously, she held executive positions at the Global Fund for Women, and at Women's World Banking, and the International Women's Development Agency. She was a long-standing board member of the Women's Funding Network and co-authored The Uprising of Women in Philanthropy, a landmark book chronicling the rise of feminist funding movements worldwide. Jane's commitment to justice also extends into climate advocacy, and she was one of the original 75 Australian trained by Al Gore to become a climate change presenter, and remains active as a member of the Climate Reality Corps. She's also a Senior Atlantic Fellow with the Inequities Institute at the London School of Economics, where she contributes to interdisciplinary efforts to tackle global inequality. She holds a degree with honors in history from the University of Adelaide and a master's in peace and conflict studies from Sydney University. Known for her strategic vision and storytelling, Jane's work continues to inspire transformative change for and marginalized community across the globe. So that about our wonderful commentators or wonderful speakers of this morning. But you're probably wondering, where is Jane Sloane? And where is Kavita? Okay, so, well, Kavita joined, and as I said, you were probably wondering, so where is Jane? I mean, and Kavita. Jane is not here. Unfortunately, she had an unforeseen event that prevented her from joining us live today. But in true spirit of solidarity and resourcefulness, we have a wonderful solution for you. We're incredibly grateful that our very own research committee chair, Professor Swarna Rajagopalan, has graciously stepped in to share Jane's insights and reflections with you. And between us, they are also good friends. So they have exchanged notes, and Swarna will bring Jane's voice in the room and today and share her valuable contributions as part of this important conversation. As always, we make things happen, right? Because that's what resourceful women do. So thank you, Swarna, for stepping in and contributing with that. So I want to, before we dive into this conversation, I want to say that the dialogue today is intended to be exactly that, a dialogue, rather than just two individuals providing their insights. So I invite you to please raise your hand if you want to contribute to this conversation, because those are the richest dialogues when people chime in and they are able to provide their experiences, their expertise, their opinions. So I wanted to start off, Swarna, asking you, why is access to academic travel funding such a critical issue, especially for scholars in the Global South?
Thank you, Diana. I'm proud to impersonate Jane, however imperfectly. But I want to start off by saying that, partly because it's scarce, most people, contrary to what people think, even people coming in from the global north, don't always have an abundance of funding. Graduate students, early career people have very little funding that they can count on, that they can play with, that can be sure of. It won't cover most costs. For Global South people, a couple of other factors become critical. First of all, the strength of their currencies. So in order to spend $100, they probably have to spend thousands of their own currency, and their salaries are not that high. So that becomes a very big chunk of income. And also for most of us bearing non-global North passports, virtually every country requires a visa fee, a complicated travel process to the visa issuing center. So it becomes really difficult. All the costs mount, and even the IPSA grants, which are often the only source that we have access to, varies from $700 to $1,000, which in 2025 will barely cover your ticket most of the time. Leave alone a hotel in a city like Seoul or a city like Buenos Aires was red, unfortunately for Argentina, but not so bad for all of us. Buenos Aires was not as expensive as it could have been. But, the costs really mount. Rome is going to be prohibitive because Schengen visas are difficult. Rome is not a cheap city. So I'm already thinking that Seoul is probably going to be my last Congress. So those are all the reasons why I think it gets really complicated.
Yes, I hope Seoul is not one of your last Congress for sure, but I definitely hear your concerns, and I think one of the reasons why access to academic travel funding is such a critical issue for scholars in the Global South is because oftentimes the knowledge that gets out to the world, the knowledge that we consume, is the knowledge from the Global North. And why? Because, as you rightly say, we don't have the funds for the travels, for the stipends to eat, to have adequate accommodation, etc. So that also triggers into the knowledge that goes out to the world and to continues to feed that that same line of thought that in which the global south is not well represented. And I would like to open the mic also to someone who may like to have a comment about this, please. Don't be shy. We are here between friends. We may not know each other personally, but we definitely share the struggles about funding and having limited resources to go to these conferences and to share our work. Well, people start to warm up and feel more comfortable about, and opening up their mics and sharing their experiences. We only have about 40 some minutes worth of time for this dialogue. So I would like to dive right into the useful stuff, into that practical stuff. Oh, I see a hand raised. Farah, please go ahead before I continue.
Hello, everyone. I'm Farah Faisal. Let me just say, I'm a retired diplomat, very happily being retired, but active in the in the academic circle. And very nice to meet you, Diana, as well, and hello, Swarna. I also just wanted to come in on the issue of when we talk about funding, it's not just the travel and the accommodation that we are concerned about. I also feel, especially coming from the global south and not holding a British or European passport, even the application for visas can be quite difficult. Because for me, because I don't have a at the moment, I don't hold a British passport or residence visa. I'm concerned about I might have to actually apply from the Maldives, and Maldives doesn't have a South Korean embassy there. So if I have to go there, that actually adds up to a lot of the costs. And if, I don't have clarity on exactly because someone's finding out for me, but those are the kind of additional costs that we may not have kind of calculated at this moment. So it might be useful, I think, if we can get some information on these kind of issues as well, so that it helps us to budget better. Just want to say that.
Okay, yes, very good points, Haram. In fact, there are different countries that they don't have the consulates or the embassies in which they need to apply for the visa to, in this case, for the upcoming IPSA Congress in Seoul, and that poses a huge burden on scholars that want to travel. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if that is your one of your concerns. I can definitely send an email to the IPSA organizers, because I feel that these should be topics that need to be considered by them, and also account for, perhaps discounts, perhaps some kind of aid that to some degree can help these scholars to also travel and make it to these conferences.
IPSA actually has a link on the Congress website to the South Korean website for visas. So, Farah, you can look that up. That has country-specific information. But you're right. Those sorts of things, though, these congresses and conferences, in fact, let's face it, academics is actually defined by people in the global north. And so they don't even think, for them, these are non-issues. They can pick up their EU or American passports, Canadian passports, and go anywhere that they want. And for us, every one of these things is an obstacle. So, always thought about these things, but in this chair in RC07, I'm struck by the irony of the fact that most of the people who will make it to Korea are going to be people from the global north talking about the global south. And it's not right. So anyway.
It is not right. No, definitely it's not. And that's why these spaces are so important, so we can learn from those who have been successful at raising the funds needed, at reaching out, and so we can learn those strategies and go to these places to showcase our work. So diving right into the very practical stuff, what works and what doesn't work. I know that Jane has shared with Swarna some really helpful tips because she is someone who has been doing this type of fundraising for a long time. So Swarna, please share with us some of those very practical tips for applying for travel grants and fellowships, and some fundraising tactics that you can share today.
So, Diana, I have about 3.5 pages of notes from Jane, and I'm going to read them out as she has sent them, and fairly slowly. Bear in mind this is being recorded and it will be available on YouTube. If you miss something, you can catch it there. But you can also reach out to her on LinkedIn. She's open to that. Jane Sloane, Sloane. Okay, so
Yes.
I'm going to read her notes now. Unlocking access, funding your academic journey. Here are observations and tips from my experience. Track the events and organizations that fund speakers to speak at key conferences and events. For instance, the London School of Economics annual Politics of Inequality conference pays all speakers return travel to London and associated costs. 2, donors are sometimes willing to fund the organization organizing the conference to support diverse speaker participation, but not pay for individual participants. For instance, several government donors funded us to ensure diverse participation in a conference we organized on care justice in Indonesia called the Bali Care Economy Dialogue. And then we, as conference organizers, arranged the travel for the speakers. The Ford Foundation has funded important convenings on climate justice, sexual violence, and many other issues. So has Open Societies Foundation. If you have any relationship with the event organizers, then encouraging them to engage with potential donors to offset speaker travel costs is worthwhile. Third, while it's difficult for international NGOs to fund projects in India, it is possible for them to engage individuals as consultants, and so it's worthwhile identifying potential organizations that may engage you as a consultant so that you can receive a travel stipend or per diem in addition to your direct travel costs. We did that at a session I organized for the Asia Foundation at the Australasian Aid Conference in Canberra when we had speakers from India. Fourth, women's funds can be a source of funding for a group of speakers speaking on a critical issue related to gender equality and women's rights. The Global Fund for Women provides women-led organizations with event organizing and travel grants. If you have or are connected to a women-led organization, then this is another potential source of funding. Women's Fund Asia provides travel grants for activists engaging in advocacy in all 18 WFA mandated countries. And so you could look at how you configure your presentation as you contributing to advocacy efforts to address a critical issue, particularly if you are working in collaboration with other researchers and community organizations. Also, Women's Fund Asia provides organizing collaborative events grants, which allows organizations to apply for support for organizing exchange visits, convenings, trainings, or workshops. For young women speaking at conferences, Prida Young Feminist Fund also supports conference travel. Hi, Kavita, I'm impersonating Jane. It's also worth pitching a whole panel session to a donor that has a particular interest in the topic you are speaking about. For instance, for health-related research, the UK-based Wellcome Foundation has previously funded individual speakers to present at conferences. There is a rising amount of funding, especially small grants, for climate-related research and events, and so think about how your academic research may intersect with this issue to potentially increase the funding options available. It's also worth tapping into faith-based and service-based organizations that may support individual requests. For instance, as a Quaker, this is Jane speaking, I was able to secure funding from the Quaker Peace Fund to support a young First Nations researcher to present on health and climate change at an international conference. Rotary has sometimes also funded individual requests, as have the Global Peace Network, Sir Optimists International, and the Global Women's Business Network, Zonta International, both of which are UN accredited. Universities often have hub or observatory projects with principal researchers and other researchers that have access to discretionary budgets for supporting research presentations that advance the focus of their research. So it's worth being in touch with university departments whose work aligns with your research interests. Some national science organizations and agencies have funding for science-related research presentations, such as STEM-related. For instance, in India, the India Science and Technology Innovation Portal and the International Brain Research Organization, India Bioscience Travel Grants, and the INLAC's Shiv Dasani Foundation which offers the INLAC's Research Travel Grant. It's worth considering applying for fellowships that will then support your travel to key conferences.
Dear Swarna,
Yeah.
perhaps we go into the fellowships. What do you think in right after?
Okay.
What about if we?
This is just an. Yeah, I guess there's one. I mean, they're all fellowships and funding one after the other, but I will just go to the last one. She says, speaking of Australia, the location for COP31 will be announced in June. It will either be Turkey or Australia as part of a Pacific Australia partnership bid. There's a high likelihood it will be in Australia. And so I also recommend finding opportunities to build connections with Australian universities and research institutions, because a lot of money will be flowing in the lead up to, as well as during, COP31, which will take place in November 26. Any research you're doing that is linked to climate change may have more opportunities for funding due to the attention on climate issues in Australia and the region, and the interest in organizing convenings and presentations that build the evidence base on climate change and shed light on innovations and promising and proven approaches. Of course, she adds, this may also depend on the election outcome in Australia next month, which is the story of all funding. She's got 3 fellowship notes, which when you ask me again, I will read out separately.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I hope everybody has taken copious notes, because that was really, really practical, very valuable information. Thank you so much, Swarna. Welcome, Kavita. So you have been duly presented. We know who you are and the wealth of experience that you bring to this webinar. And we just had an initial conversation about why is access to academic travel funding such a critical issue for scholars in the Global South. So we had, Swarna gave us her point of views, and then we just went right into the practical conversation of some strategies, tips, fundraising tactics that our attendees today can utilize for their own journey seeking travel funding. So Swarna has gracefully brought the voice of Jane today, who is unable to attend. So that's why she was going over those the notes that Jane sent over. So Kavita, can you please share some tips for we're gonna, because the time is limited and we want to squeeze the most of you and Swarna and Jane. the most information we can. Let's go right into the practical strategies. What tips, fundraising tactics you can share? What has worked for you in the past? What hasn't worked? You know, we understand that you have worked with these global organizations with millions of dollars or euros in funding. So we're, you know, here we are talking about much global scale, but sometimes it's really, really hard to still to raise 1,000 or 2,000 to make it to a conference internationally. So please share with us what we can do about it, what has worked, how we can go about it.
Thank you, and my apologies. My large experience in fundraising did not extend to being able to fix the internet when it went out in my house. So I'm really, I wish my expertise was slightly better in that regard. So my apologies to everybody, and especially to you, Diana and Swarna, for having put you in this situation. And hello to everybody listening. I have had a long experience, of course, working in the space of raising money for a number of different issues, but particularly within the space of women's rights and gender justice. And I would say the first thing that is really, I think, challenging about raising money for attending anything that has to do with your own work or your own academic presentations is that you're, in a strange way, you're raising money for yourself, which I think makes it very difficult for anybody. You know, all of us who raise money feel quite, even the ones who have the most challenges will feel comfortable raising money for what we feel is a really good cause. And we are unembarrassed about asking others to put their money towards that really good cause. And I think one of the things that becomes very difficult and challenging for us is that we feel a little awkward, to say the least, and sometimes downright, you know, tongue-tied or really sort of quite unable to ask anybody for support because we feel that it's in a way asking for something for ourselves. So I think I just want to begin to address that to begin with, which is just to say that one way to help think about this is that your participation in an academic conference or your contribution to a conference like that in many ways is really part of contributing towards a larger set of issues and a debate and a conversation about a larger set of issues that is really important for us to be able to make a difference in that issue. So if you can sort of get around that initial hurdle, I think that's one very important way in which you can really think about supporting yourself. The other thing on that is of course, there are places that you can apply to for funding. I think that is always an important place to be willing to just sort of put the word out, let people know, and nowadays really use social media as well to be able to kind of let people know that you are looking for funding to be able to attend a conference or an academic presentation, and that this is sort of what you need. So whether it is informing friends and family, whether it is letting people in your workplace know, whether it is kind of making it more broadly visible that in fact, you know, you're going to a conference in so and so many months and this is what you need. I think that is something that we now have resources. Not all of us are on social media, not all of us feel comfortable doing that. But I do think that if you are in a space where you already are using those tools, please consider that also as a way, because it's often surprising who might hear about this and say to you, oh, I know so-and-so, you should maybe write to them or contact them. Or the other thing that I would say is that in the context of places in the global South, I think we do often underestimate the fact that there are now considerable means within places like both foundations, but also academic institutions themselves. And I think Swarna already spoke about that a few minutes ago when she was reading from the recommendations that were being made, which is that we don't often begin by asking our own institutions where we are at to ask whether those things are possible. And I've also learned more recently that places that you graduated from, so you might be working at a different university, but places that you graduated from often have resources and funds for alumni, for example. So you might have graduated from an American university, you might now be teaching in the Global South, or you might be based in the Global South, but perhaps your university where you graduated from has a program for alumni scholars that offers fellowship and travel monies. So that is also something worth looking at. Women's colleges, I know, for example, both Mount Holyoke, Wellesley, Smith, and others often have those kinds of resources for their alumni, and it's worth actually exploring that. One area that I have also had some practical experience with that perhaps is worth mentioning. It's not in all countries in the Global South, but women's funds are often places that will look at an application for, particularly if the conference that you're going to is on an issue that is broadly related to advancing gender justice and women's rights. You might be able to go to your local women's fund and say, I am going to be representing my country, or I'll be representing this set of issues that you're concerned about. And I think that they are also a source that is worthwhile looking at. And then finally, Diana, I'll just end by saying that I think sometimes what I have also seen is like not so much for academic conferences, but certainly for some of the more perhaps activist feminist conferences. Recently, the AWID conference that was held in Bangkok, applications that are made jointly, for example. So you might contact the conference organizer, and they might be making an application to a larger foundation or a donor, in which they can say, we will be bringing this many scholars or this many people from the Global South. And that's another way to kind of approach potential funding. So I think sometimes we underestimate going to the conference organizer themselves and saying, look, we are 10 of us or 15 of us who are. So think about also applications that are not only done for yourself as an individual, but also the potential that a group of you could put in a request together, either to the conference organizer or to other funders who you think might be willing to support the issue. And I think that that's another way to approach it. And I'll just stop there for a second and allow for questions or other comments. Maybe Swarna, you want to add.
Great. So listening to both of you, there are resources out there. I know sometimes it may seem that funding are scarce, but I want to believe that it's not, because oftentimes funding goes unused and we simply cannot match the need with the funds. So one of the issues that many of us face is that we are good at writing papers, we're good at writing in internationally recognized journals, but we're not good at pitching for ourselves. We're not good at quote unquote selling ourselves. So Kavita, you have worked for these organizations that have and perhaps raised thousands, millions of dollars. How do you manage to come up with a good pitch that sells the organization? In this case, how do we sell ourselves? How do we look good to the eyes of the donor and worth investing on us to travel and showcase our work in these conferences?
Yeah, I think there are three really important things. I think one thing that's important to demonstrate, whether it's yourself or whether it is an organization or a cause, it is a belief in the issue that you are asking money for. So I think demonstrating a commitment, if this is for a conference on human rights, demonstrating with a couple of lines or a couple of background information that I have been involved with these issues before. I have a long history of being committed to these issues. A few examples of why these have been issues that have really made a difference in, and where you feel that you can make a difference. I think that's the first thing. So showing some demonstration and belief in yourself. The second, and I think this is important, and I think we often underestimate this, is demonstrating that you yourself are willing to put in a certain amount of funds for yourself. So I think this is something we don't often think about, but I think funders, for example, are often very inspired by organizations in which all of the people who are part of the organization themselves contribute to the organization, whether that's board members or whether that's staff. So in the case of your applying for yourself, can you make a case that I will be willing to pay for this, and I know that I am able to do that because I think for many academics, of course, we don't have a lot of extra money, but on the other hand, we do have our own salaries and our own some means. We are not people with no means, right? So what can we demonstrate that we are actually willing to contribute to this effort, and then basically say to the funder, I am willing to contribute this much. Would you be able to match me 2 times or 3 times or 5 times? This is what I would like to be able to request. So I think that's a second approach. And then the third is what I briefly mentioned a little bit earlier, which is how is my work? Yes, you may think that I'm contributing to a journal, or I'm contributing to very abstract academic conferences, but how is this actually making a difference to a cause that I know you as a funder care about? So whether it's on climate, or whether it's on violence against women, or whether it's on literature, whether it's on the arts, is there a way in which we can say a little bit to the person who we are applying for funding about the contribution that our work, that we genuinely believe that our work is making towards a larger body of knowledge that I think is really important at this moment, making maybe some kind of connection also to some of the challenges that we're facing at this moment. So in the case of this particular moment in the US, we might say something about academic freedom. We might say something about issues of diversity. We might say something about questions of race and questions of inclusion. So there are, I think, different ways in which you can try to also connect your particular cause to the urgency of a moment and make the case to a funder that there is a way in which, if you can support, I believe in myself, I'm putting this much towards my own ability to attend this conference. And if you were willing to help me by joining me with support for this, this is the difference we could make together on this issue. And I think that those 3 things, in my experience, often make a big difference to funders being able to at least hear why they should be willing to invest in you.
Excellent points, Kavita. And I will add a last one to this pitch that we are trying to create here. Oftentimes, funders, they want to see, okay, if I invest in you, what is it in for me? What am I going to get out of the investment that I'm doing on you? Okay, you're just gonna go to showcase your work in the conference, great on you, and what about me? So I think it is very important that we also add, okay, I'm gonna go to this travel conference, I'm going to showcase this paper that I have, and upon my return, I can offer you to host a webinar. I can offer you to contribute to a newsletter that you have. I can contribute to a research that you have going on. Something that they see that we're not just taking, because oftentimes, even when somebody comes, when it's like the little sibling that comes and always is asking, but never giving anything in return. So I think that will kind of close this really good pitch. And hopefully, you have some really good points from to create your next email, create your next page for your fundraising.
We have to the point on investing in oneself. I want to say one reason I was really hesitant to be on this panel is that I've almost never got any kind of funding for almost anything that I've done. Spent a good part of my adult life working pro bono. So it's a weird life and I don't recommend it. But one reason that I have been, and I should say, Kavita, that universities have a lot of funding now in India, but they're also very gingerly about giving that funding for conferences. There is a view that I hear quite commonly about how you should only go to conferences that pay for you, which would leave most of us stranded in our living rooms most of the time. But I've always paid my way through things even when I couldn't, sometimes by maxing out. The first time I went to IPSA, I maxed out a credit card because I figured if I did not get out of my department and take my work to other people and hear what they thought about it, then I would not grow. And I've done this over and over on my journey. I want to say this here, although it's not relevant to fundraising, because if somebody listening to this is thinking, I'm going to take out that loan and go, I'm going to max out that card and go, I want to second that point. If you don't invest in yourself, who will? You are your most important investment and investor. So when you show faith in yourself and you make your own opportunities, that's also a good thing. We live in a world that makes
Very
it
much.
look
Very
like
much.
a bad thing, but it doesn't have to be. Again, this, like everything else, is a matter of marketing and branding. You can make it out to be good.
Definitely.
I strongly agree with that, and I do think that actually, combined with what Diana said, which is offering something back to the funder, but even if you have a record of having done that 2 or 3 times and saying, I've done all I can to try and bring my voice and my participation into different fora. But at this point, it's going to be really difficult for me to be able to manage without, but at least you have a record of being able to show that you have believed in yourself and you have invested in yourself. I do think that it makes a difference. And I agree with you, Diana, that if you can then say to the person who does support you, I'm very willing to be part of whatever ways in which I can give back and share with your community and what I've learned and how I can contribute, to our shared goals. I think both those things are super important. So thanks for bringing them up.
Swarna, you had some really great resources for fellowship that I do not want you to go without mentioning them. Please share those resources with us.
I shouldn't take credit for this. So I continue to read. It's worth considering applying for fellowships that will then support your travel to key conferences. For instance, consider applying to become an Atlantic Fellow. You can be a non-resident or resident fellow at one of the 7 universities and institutes involved in the program that works with the Atlantic Institute in Oxford. You then become a senior fellow attached to the institute, and you're able to access travel and research grants. I think for a lot of people in this job market, this is my note, who may be independent scholars because there simply aren't as many university jobs as advertised, these sorts of things are really important. In a similar vein, the Rockefeller's Bellagio Center in Italy invites individual and group applications each year for residency at the Center for Writing and Research. The great thing about securing this all expenses paid fellowship is that you then have the opportunity to network with other residents from around the world and build connections. And you also then become part of the Bellagio community and hear about other grants. These ecosystem approaches, I think this is really important, to securing funding for research conferences are important as it's a way of building diverse avenues for support. And this is not something that people tell you when you're an early career person. Also consider, I'm reading Jane again, if you can align yourself as a research fellow or partner with a university that has sizable funding for a research grant or a center that aligns with your interests. For instance, the ARC Center of Excellence for the Elimination of Violence Against Women at Monash in Australia is building a regional cohort of researchers working to end violence against women. Melbourne Climate Futures at the University of Melbourne has established an Indo-Pacific Climate Hub as an expert network that enables research, knowledge sharing, and leadership on adaptation, resilience, and justice in the Indo-Pacific. And I think that's it. Then there's the COP31 point, which I read earlier. So those are Jane's points. I think the
Thank you so much,
ecosystem
Swarna.
is really good.
Yes, and for those that, you know, were not able to catch every single resource that you provided, I am happy to come up with a list of the resources that you outline and share them with those that are present today. And, you know,
Maybe we can enter
yeah.
some of it in that funding database.
Correct. Yes. On that database, thank you for bringing that up. You may have seen in the live chat that Uditi posted there a message. Basically, that is about this database on funding resources that we created not long ago, and anyone can go there and contribute and put their the resources that they believe can help other people. So this is like it's a crowdsourced database. And I will go ahead and input them there. You can access, you can either view, and you know, at some point we're going to share the resources. For now, it's open for contribution, but I will make a compilation sometime towards the end of this month, and I will and we can have you know, somehow we can find a way to disseminate these resources with you. And so we don't have much time left. However, I would like to give the attendees the opportunity to voice their comments, they, you know, bring their opinions or ask any questions to Kavita, Swarna, and Jane, who is also in spirit between us. Please. And we may have already warmed up after almost an hour together, so we're not completely strangers. So please go ahead and ask the questions, that your burning questions, or give us any comments about what we discussed or anything that you consider important on this topic. Well, if our attendees warm up, we'll give them a couple of minutes to draft their questions. I would like to ask Kavita and Swarna to give us or to share with us one piece of advice they wish they had known earlier. You know, obviously related to funding, and either, you know, funding for conferences or anything related to this journey that sometimes seems a bit hard to reach. Swarna, what is one piece of advice that you wish you had known earlier?
I wish I had known about all these funding sources. And I wish someone had just said to me, I think women cancel themselves before they apply. I wish somebody had said to me, well, if you apply, you will get it. Because sometimes that's all that it takes. One person saying that to you. If you don't apply, you won't get anything. But if you do apply, of course, you'll get funding. I wish someone had said that to me. Joancy has a question.
Thank you, Swarna. Joanne Nancy Van Wake says, you may also want to... Oh, Joanne, please.
Yeah. Thank you. Good afternoon from Pretoria in South Africa. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to participate in this event. I mentioned in the chat, for those who may not have seen it, that there is a great place at Stellenbosch University, the Institute for Advanced Studies, TIAS. I've been fortunate to be a fellow there. So they have a process where you can be a fellow for up to 6 months, or you can have a group of fellows working on a specific writing project. It's a very generous setup that they have there. And I think that one of the previous RC07 chairpersons, Amanda Goos, who is from Stellenbosch University, has also been associated with STIAS. And I think that's a wonderful opportunity. So just be mindful that it takes about 18 months for the application process, but it's really a great place. It's close, as I said, to Cape Town also, and it may be very useful for people to consider. So you will be able to travel, of course, but also then have the opportunity to participate in conferences. You can even have a conference that you organize at STIAS during your tenure. So just be mindful of that opportunity in the Global South for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joanne. Very, very resourceful place to have a look at. I hope everyone is taking a note, but we'll also add a resource into our database. And is there anyone that would like to come in and share their any comments before we close? And that before we close, I would like, if no one has decided to come in yet, I would like to ask Kavita, what is a piece of advice that you wish you have known earlier that you can share with us?
I would agree with Swarna that I think that there was a way in which I think I kind of hesitated about the idea of asking for money for myself. So I think this was something, and I mentioned that earlier. I think I've never hesitated being able to ask for money for causes that I've really believed in, but I've had much less confidence about applying for something which somehow I saw as some kind of special privilege for myself. And I think particularly for women scholars, I think this is academics, scholars, activists, we are hesitant to, we might be willing to take a chance on ourselves and put our own resources in it, as Swarna said, but we're hesitant to take the next step after that and believe that if we are willing to invest in ourselves, others might also be willing to invest in us. So I think that was part of the reason I gave that as an example. I wish I had known that. I wish someone had said to me, look, that's not the same thing as being selfish or being full of yourself or somehow, I don't know, so I think that would have been very helpful. And I think I also would have, the one other thing I think is important to say to everyone, and maybe you've already covered this, but, it is common when you apply for grants to not get them. So that's the other side of this. And I think sometimes people can get very disheartened by, you apply, you put in a request and they say no, and then another person says no, and then another person says no. I think that can also be very sort of, I don't know, you can take it in a way as though it's personal. I'm not good enough. There's, my work isn't good enough. People don't believe in me. And then that can lead you to stop doing it again. But I would say in both instances, I wish someone had told me the worst thing that can happen is that someone will say no. And so what? You'll get up the next morning and you'll be like, oh, that was too bad, but I'll try again, kind of thing. And I think that too is something important to learn. Somebody saying no to you is not a statement about the value of your work, nor is it a reflection on the importance of your work. It's simply the fact that for many different reasons, that organization or that particular funder was not able to make a decision that was a positive one for you. But you can't let that actually be the reason that you stop asking again or that you stop applying for other options.
And if I could just add to what Kavita said, the rejection letter I got for the IPSA travel grant this time had this astonishing statistic. There were 40 grants worldwide and over 2,000 applicants. So, there's just so much money, that's all. And it's so big. Then you have second and third tier questions about how do we then raise the money? How do we do this organizationally? all of the things that people have talked about today. But I think today is sort of a point of departure for RC07.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Swarna, Kavita. I really appreciate you showing yourself here vulnerable, and even the experiences in which you haven't gotten travel funding. So perhaps for the earlier scholars that are, or the aspiring scholars that are present or that may watch this recording, do not get disheartened. At any time in your career, you can hear a no, or you can receive a no. So just brush it off, continue going on, because your worth is beyond what you can even imagine. And if one door open, 10 will if one door closes, 10 will open for you. And now with these wonderful resources that have been shared with us, I'm sure that your journey will be even easier. Thank you again, Swarna, Kavita, Jane, in the spirit, and everyone who attended this webinar. We look forward to having you join the upcoming webinars, and we will be in touch with you again, sharing the results of our database, and we invite you to continue to feed this crowdsource. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Diana, for doing this.
Thank you, Diana, for your wonderful sharing, and
Thank you.
apologies again for my technical inabilities.
No problem. It's part of the fun. Have a good day,
Lovely
everyone.
to meet you, Swarna, in person.
Yes. Yes, looking forward
Well,
to
not
that.
in person, on Zoom, I guess.
Yes. I'll see you in Seoul, though.